When the average consumer is wandering around the mall, they often find themselves wondering, how can they find such a trendy item of clothing for such a cheap price? This dilemma stems from an issue called fast fashion. Fast fashion is the accelerated process of combining creative marketing strategies with cheap design processes, as well as cheap manufacturing processes and labor, to create virtually the same experience at a much lower cost. Now, the main question people find themselves asking centered around fast fashion is why? The four main goals for fast fashion are to cut down costs, to cut down design times, to cut down production times, as well as delivery times, to give you the same experience, again, at a much lower price. Now, the main issue with this is many consumers don't understand that the brands they are buying from are considered fast fashion brands. Some of these include, and for the main overall factor of convenience, some of these brands include Shein, Zara, H&M, Boohoo, Forever 21, Topshop, and two not listed, which are Primark and Gap. Now, for example, Zara, a very popular clothing brand at the moment, is worth over $13 billion, and this is because they utilize those cheap means of design, production, and delivery. For Zara, from the time that a product is designed to the time that it is put on a shelf can be as little as 4 weeks. For other companies just like Zara, that time period can be as little as 14 to 21 weeks. Now, the purpose of fast fashion overall is to keep the customer interested with an overwhelming amount of options, and for companies like Zara, that means in 96 different countries. Fast fashion's growing convenience for people is continuing to put our earth at risk, and it won't stop at just fast production times and cheap costs. Most clothing produced by these companies is made out of a cheap material called polyester. Polyester's popularity is rapidly growing larger than any other materials, including cotton or wool, and this is because polyester is cheap for companies to make and buy. Polyester is also known for being more durable and drying quicker. Polyester is a non-biodegradable material, meaning that it can take up to 200 years to degrade if it does at all. Another issue with this material is that it is a petroleum-based material and fiber, meaning that it requires the burning of fossil fuels to manufacture it. The burning of fossil fuels is heavily contributing to our Earth's global warming and climate change. This means that 70 million barrels of oil are used just for fast fashion alone each year. Each time polyester is cleaned in a washing machine, the material shreds fibers of microplastics that eventually travel back into the water source. Because of this, polyester laundry is one of the leading causes of microplastics in the Earth's oceans. Just over 60% of clothing purchased on the Earth is made with plastic-based materials as well. Although microplastics can be shedded from other materials, polyester is still the leading cause. Microplastics in water tend to threaten wild and marine life and can ultimately be fatal for them as well. A 2017 report from the IUCN, also known as the International Union for Conservation of Nature, estimated that about 35% of microplastics in the ocean come from washing synthetic materials like polyester. According to Constant Tedder, fast fashion contributes to about 4% of the greenhouse gas emissions on Earth, and Constant Tedder estimates that number to get up to 30% by 2030. H2O treatment plants help ease the minds of people for this issue, but the reality of it is that water treatment plants let in about 40% of microfibers that are carried in water itself. Eventually, this harms the wildlife and marine life in the water because the fibers contain things like hydrogen chloride, pesticides, and other dangerous chemicals. Chemicals should worry seafood consumers as well because the plastic is being ingested by the food that person is going to eventually eat. Although synthetics and pesticides pollute water, textile dyes are the world's second largest water polluter. Textile dyes tend to leak into our waterways and often alter the aesthetic characteristics of these large bodies of water that people love so much about them. Textile dyes can also contain carcinogens, which are known to increase cancer chances in humans. Textile dye pollution can stunt plant growth as well. With fast fashion being such a fast-growing and moving industry, and new products being made every week and being designed every week as well, it is evident that water waste is also a large issue with fast fashion manufacturing, but I will not be touching on that today. Consumers are constantly looking past clothes that they just bought to find something newer and more trendy or more in style. And with most fashion items being made out of polyester, it is not hard for the owner to throw out the material because it is cheap and quickly goes out of style. Textile waste is becoming more of an issue with this growing industry, and for an example of that, Zara produces over 10,000 pieces every year. The average American also throws away about 81 pounds of clothes each year, meaning that a garbage truck amount full of clothes is being thrown away or burned every second. These discarded clothing items sit in landfills for multiple years without any way of breaking down, degrading, or being burned. Consumers, after educating themselves on the danger of this industry, can often find themselves asking the questions of how they can be smarter, safer, and more conscious shoppers altogether. Smaller local businesses are often good sources of natural and/or organic clothing materials and can often be handmade at the location itself, eliminating the process of child labor or sweatshops. This is one of my proposals to save the planet. Thrifting or buying secondhand can also be a great way to try to slow down the production of synthetic material-based clothing. Buying second time around can also help repurpose already used items from fast fashion companies to slow down mass production altogether and further eliminate environmental damage. Thanks.
All right, a couple of questions.
Yeah.
How did your research question evolve as you moved through the process?
I'm looking at it right now. So it started out with, I thought more about how does conformity, specifically in females in society today, affect like fast fashion's popularity and the rates of that. But I found that it would be not only easier, but I thought it would be more concrete and more interesting to me personally if I could figure out the effects that fast fashion had on the environment. And I kind of figured out that it was like more intense than I thought as I went into just researching fast fashion in general.
Okay, thank you. What additional questions emerged from your research and why are they important?
I touched on this a teeny bit in my presentation, but I did do a good amount of research on water waste that contributed to fast fashion, and because that was one of my questions, was how much water do we waste trying to do this, and it was somewhere around like 77,000 gallons of water to produce one pair of jeans. So I thought that was really interesting, just how much water goes into making that, as well as the process of child labor, which I also hardly touched on, but I almost went into that as well, and just harsh working conditions in the factories as well.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.